In tears, a poor single mom signed the divorce papers and left. 6 years later, the billionaire CEO saw her. But what he did left everyone shocked. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension as she sat at the small wooden table in their cramped apartment. Her hands trembled as she held the pen, its weight feeling heavier than it ever had before. Across from her sat her soon-to-be ex-husband, his face unreadable but distant. She couldn't bring herself to look into his eyes. Instead, her gaze lingered on the ink-stained paper that would forever change her life. The decision hadn't come easily. Years of heartache, financial struggles, and emotional neglect had worn her down until there was nothing left but an empty shell of who she once was. Yet, through all the pain, one thing kept her going: her son. He was only 5, innocent and full of dreams, unaware of the storm raging around him. For his sake, she knew this was the right choice, even if it meant starting over alone. With a shaky breath, she signed her name, each stroke of the pen echoing like thunder in the silence. Tears streamed down her cheeks, blurring her vision, but she didn't stop. When the last letter was written, she stood abruptly, clutching her purse tightly against her chest. Without another word, she walked out the door, leaving behind not just her marriage but also the remnants of her old life. 6 years passed, though they felt more like a lifetime. Life after the divorce wasn't easy. There were days when she questioned whether she'd made the right decision, days when the bills piled up and the fridge was nearly empty. But she persevered, driven by love for her child and a quiet determination to build something better for them both. She found work as a waitress at a local diner, earning just enough to get by. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the rent and put food on the table. On weekends, she cleaned offices to earn extra money. Every penny saved went toward her son's education fund, a dream she refused to let slip away. Despite the hardships, she managed to create a warm home filled with laughter and hope. Her son grew into a bright, curious boy, excelling in school and bringing pride to her weary heart. But no matter how hard she tried, some things stayed beyond her reach. The luxury of time for herself, the ability to pursue her own dreams, and the security of knowing tomorrow wouldn't bring another crisis, all these remained elusive. Still, she pressed on, finding joy in the little victories and strength in the knowledge that she was doing everything possible for her child. Then came the day that changed everything. It started like any other morning. She woke early, kissed her son goodbye as he headed off to school, and made her way to the diner. The lunch rush was unusually busy, with customers streaming in non-stop. By mid-afternoon, she was exhausted but grateful for the tips lining her apron pocket. As she cleared a table near the window, she glanced outside absent-mindedly, and froze. Standing across the street was a man she hadn't seen in 6 years. His presence was unmistakable, even from a distance. Tall, impeccably dressed, and radiating authority, he looked every bit the successful businessman he'd become. Memories flooded back, sharp and unrelenting. The arguments, the cold silences, the final moments in that tiny apartment, it all came rushing back in an overwhelming wave. Her first instinct was to turn away, to pretend she hadn't seen him. But fate had other plans. Their eyes met through the glass, locking onto each other as if drawn by an invisible force. Time seemed to stand still. For a brief moment, neither moved nor spoke. Then, without warning, he began walking toward the diner. Panic gripped her chest. What could he possibly want? Why now, after all these years? Questions swirled in her mind as she watched him approach, his strides purposeful and confident. Before she could retreat, the bell above the door jingled, announcing his arrival. Heads turned as he stepped inside, his commanding presence drawing attention from every corner of the room. He scanned the space briefly before his gaze landed on her. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by something else, something she couldn't quite place. Without hesitation, he walked straight toward her, ignoring the whispers and stares of the other patrons. Her heart pounded wildly as he stopped mere feet away, towering over her slight frame. "Emily," he said, his voice low and steady. Hearing her name spoken by him sent a shiver down her spine. How long had it been since anyone called her that? Not since the day she walked out of their shared life. I don't think we have anything to say to each other," she stammered, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Up close, he looked different, older, more polished, but those piercing eyes were the same. They held hers captive, searching for answers she wasn't ready to give. To her surprise, he didn't argue or try to explain himself. Instead, he reached into his suit jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This is for you," he said simply, holding it out. Confused, she hesitated before taking it. The envelope was thick, its contents heavy in her hand. "What is this?" she asked cautiously. "A gesture," he replied, his tone unreadable. "Something I should have done a long time ago." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with a mysterious package and a diner full of curious onlookers. Whispers erupted around her, but she barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on the envelope clutched in her trembling hands. Slowly she opened it, revealing a stack of documents and a check, a very large check. Shock rippled through her as she read the amount. It was more money than she'd ever imagined seeing in her entire life. Attached to the check was a letter, written in his familiar handwriting. The words blurred as fresh tears welled in her eyes, but one sentence stood out clearly. "For the sacrifices you've made and the life you've built despite everything." The diner faded into the background as emotions overwhelmed her. Gratitude, anger, confusion, they all collided in a storm within her chest. What did this mean? Was it guilt, pity, or something else entirely? Over the next few days, the encounter replayed in her mind endlessly. She debated calling him, confronting him, demanding answers. But every time she picked up the phone, doubt crept in. What good would it do? Would it change anything? And most importantly, did she even want it to? Meanwhile, her son noticed the shift in her demeanor. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked one evening as they sat together at the kitchen table. His wide, concerned eyes mirrored her own conflicted feelings. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she assured him, forcing a smile. "Just thinking about some things." Though she tried to hide it, the weight of the situation pressed heavily on her shoulders. The money offered a chance at a new beginning, a chance to provide her son with opportunities she'd only dreamed of. But accepting it felt like opening a door she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through. And then there was the question of him, the man who had once been her husband, now a stranger cloaked in wealth and power. What role, if any, did he intend to play in their lives moving forward? Did he expect something in return? Or was this truly just an act of redemption? As weeks turned into months, Emily wrestled with these questions, unsure of what path to take. The envelope sat untouched in a drawer, a constant reminder of the crossroads she faced. Little did she know, however, that the story was far from over, and that the choices she made would ripple outward, affecting not only her and her son but also the man whose world had been irrevocably altered by their reunion. Life continued its relentless march forward, yet beneath the surface, tensions simmered. Emily threw herself into her work, using the distraction to avoid making a decision about the envelope. Each day brought new challenges and small victories, keeping her grounded in the present. Her son thrived under her care, his academic achievements a source of immense pride. Yet, the shadow of uncertainty loomed large, casting doubt on the fragile stability she'd worked so hard to achieve. One crisp autumn afternoon, as golden leaves danced in the wind outside the diner, Emily received an unexpected visitor. A sleek black car pulled up curbside, drawing curious glances from passers-by. Out stepped a well-dressed woman, her polished appearance starkly contrasting with the modest surroundings. She entered the diner with an air of authority, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor. "Excuse me," the woman said, approaching Emily with a polite smile. "Are you Emily Carter?" Startled, Emily nodded, setting down the tray she'd been carrying. "Yes, that's me. My name is Margaret Lane," the woman introduced herself, extending a manicured hand. "I'm here on behalf of Mr. Alexander Reed." At the mention of his name, Emily's stomach churned. "What does he want now?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. Margaret's expression softened. "Mr. Reed has requested a meeting with you. He understands your reluctance, given past circumstances, but he insists this is important. He wishes to discuss matters concerning your son." "My son," Emily echoed, alarm bells ringing in her head. "What about my son?" "I'm afraid I can't disclose details here," Margaret replied diplomatically. "But I assure you, Mr. Reed means no harm. He simply seeks to clarify certain misunderstandings." Emily hesitated, torn between suspicion and curiosity. Could she trust him after all these years? Did she even want to hear what he had to say? Yet, the mention of her son stirred protective instincts deep within her. If there was even a remote possibility that this involved her child's future, she couldn't ignore it. "Fine," she relented finally. "Tell him I'll meet him. But on my terms." Margaret nodded approvingly. "Of course. Where and when would be convenient for you?" After arranging a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown, they parted ways. As Emily returned to her duties, her mind raced with possibilities. What could Alexander possibly want regarding her son? Had he discovered something during their separation that warranted discussion? Or was this merely another attempt to assert control over her life? The days leading up to the meeting were agonizing. Sleep eluded her, replaced by restless nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying scenarios in her head. Finally, the appointed hour arrived. Dressed in her best attire, a simple yet elegant dress borrowed from a friend, she entered the cafe, nerves taut like violin strings. Alexander was already seated, sipping coffee while reviewing documents spread across the table. Upon seeing her, he rose politely, offering a chair. "Thank you for coming, Emily," he said, his tone measured but sincere. "You mentioned my son," she began without preamble, cutting straight to the chase. "What's this about?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture that betrayed underlying stress. "There's no easy way to say this, so I'll be direct. Recently, I learned something significant about our son, something that changes everything." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Changes everything how?" Leaning forward, Alexander fixed her with a serious gaze. "Our son isn't just exceptionally bright academically. He possesses a unique talent, a gift that sets him apart. And someone knows about it. Someone dangerous." A chill ran down Emily's spine. "Dangerous? What are you talking about?" "It's complicated," he admitted. "But suffice it to say, people with vested interests are aware of his potential. They see value in exploiting it, for their gain, not ours. That's why I need your cooperation. Together, we must protect him." Stunned, Emily struggled to process his words. Danger lurking in the shadows? Exploitation of her child's gifts? It sounded like something out of a movie, not real life. Yet, looking into Alexander's earnest eyes, she sensed truth amidst the chaos. "Why now?" she demanded. "Why tell me this after all these years?" "Because I only recently uncovered the extent of the threat," he explained. "Believe me, if I'd known sooner, I would have acted differently. This isn't about us anymore, Emily. It's about ensuring our son's safety and future." Tears pricked her eyes as reality sank in. No matter their history, their shared responsibility as parents bound them together. Protecting their child transcended personal grievances. With resolve hardening within her, Emily nodded slowly. "All right," she whispered. "We'll do whatever it takes. But understand this, if you're lying to me, if you betray my trust again—" "You have my word," Alexander interrupted firmly. "I won't fail either of you this time." Thus began a journey fraught with peril and revelation, testing bonds thought broken beyond repair. United by necessity, Emily and Alexander navigated treacherous waters, uncovering secrets that threatened not only their family but also powerful entities determined to claim what they deemed rightfully theirs. Through trials and triumphs, they rediscovered strengths buried beneath layers of pain and resentment, forging anew the ties that bind parent to child, and perhaps healing wounds long festering in their hearts. As Emily and Alexander embarked on this uneasy alliance, the weight of their shared mission began to reshape the fragile dynamic between them. Trust, once shattered, was painstakingly rebuilt brick by brick. Their initial meetings were tense, each word carefully chosen to avoid reopening old wounds. Yet, as they delved deeper into the mystery surrounding their son's unique abilities, a reluctant camaraderie emerged. Their first task was understanding exactly what made their son so special. According to Alexander, It wasn't just his academic brilliance or natural curiosity, it was something far more profound. During routine medical checkups years ago, doctors had noted anomalies in his neurological patterns, dismissing them as harmless quirks. But recent developments suggested otherwise. Someone with resources and influence, had taken notice. And now, that someone posed a threat. "We need answers," Emily insisted during one of their late-night strategy sessions at her modest apartment. Papers and files littered the kitchen table, evidence of their growing investigation. Who are these people? What do they want from him? Alexander leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched onto his face. "I've been digging through my network. It's not easy. Whoever is behind this operates in shadows. But I did find traces, a company called Nexus Innovations. They specialize in advanced biotechnology and artificial intelligence." Emily frowned. "And you think they're targeting our son because of whatever he can do?" "It's not just about what he can do," Alexander corrected grimly. "It's about what he represents, a breakthrough they haven't been able to replicate themselves. His brain processes information differently, almost like a supercomputer. If they get their hands on him." He didn't finish the sentence, but Emily understood. The implications were chilling. She thought of her son's bright smile, his boundless enthusiasm for learning, and felt a surge of protectiveness. No one would harm him, not while she still drew breath. Meanwhile, their son, Liam, remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him. At 10 years old, he was a whirlwind of energy and intellect, devouring books faster than Emily could buy them. He loved solving puzzles, building intricate Lego structures, and dreaming up inventions that seemed impossible to anyone else. To him, the world was a playground of endless possibilities. One evening, as Emily tucked him into bed, he looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. "Mom, why does Dad keep calling us?" Her heart skipped a beat. So, Liam had noticed the increased communication between her and Alexander. She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "Dad and I are working on something important together," she said finally, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Something that involves you." "Me?" Liam asked, surprised. "What did I do?" "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart," she assured him quickly. "You're amazing just the way you are. But sometimes, being amazing means people pay extra attention to you. And we need to make sure those people have good intentions." Liam nodded solemnly, though confusion lingered in his expression. "Okay, Mom. Just promise me you won't let anyone take me away." The raw vulnerability in his voice broke her heart. Pulling him close, she hugged him tightly. "I promise, Liam. No one will ever take you away from me." As weeks turned into months, Emily and Alexander uncovered more pieces of the puzzle. Nexus Innovations, it turned out, was merely a front for a larger organization operating under the radar. This group, known only as the Consortium, sought to harness human potential for profit and power. Their interest in Liam stemmed from classified research suggesting his neural pathways held the key to unlocking unprecedented cognitive capabilities. "They see him as a commodity," Alexander growled during one particularly heated discussion. "A tool to be exploited." "And we won't let that happen," Emily vowed, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "But we can't fight them alone. We need help." Alexander agreed. Together, they reached out to trusted allies, former colleagues of Alexander's who specialized in cybersecurity, private investigators skilled in uncovering hidden truths, and even a retired neuroscientist willing to lend his expertise. Slowly, a team formed around them, united by a common goal: protecting Liam. Yet, as their efforts intensified, so too did the danger. Strange cars began appearing outside Emily's apartment, lingering longer than usual before driving off. Phone calls went unanswered, only to be replaced by eerie silence when she picked up the receiver. One night, as she returned home from work, she found her front door slightly ajar, the lock tampered with. Panic surged through her as she rushed inside, checking every room until she confirmed Liam was safe. When Alexander arrived shortly after, his expression darkened upon hearing her account. "They're escalating," he muttered, pacing the living room. "We don't have much time. What do we do?" Emily asked, clutching Liam's hand tightly. Her son stood beside her, wide-eyed and frightened. "We go underground," Alexander decided. "Disappear for a while until we figure out our next move. It's risky, but staying here is riskier." Though the idea terrified her, Emily knew he was right. Reluctantly, she packed essentials, explaining to Liam that they were going on an extended vacation. His excitement at the prospect masked the gravity of their situation, for now. Their journey took them across state lines, to a secluded cabin nestled deep within the woods. Owned by one of Alexander's contacts, it offered temporary refuge from prying eyes. Days passed in quiet isolation, punctuated by bursts of activity as they coordinated with their team remotely. Despite the tension, moments of normalcy surfaced. Emily taught Liam math using sticks and stones gathered from the forest floor, while Alexander regaled him with stories of constellations visible in the unpolluted night sky. But peace proved fleeting. One evening, as twilight painted the horizon in hues of orange and purple, a drone buzzed overhead, its camera lens glinting ominously. Emily spotted it first, her stomach sinking as realization dawned. "They've found us," she whispered, grabbing Liam and pulling him toward the cabin. Alexander sprang into action, activating countermeasures designed to disable the drone. Within minutes, the device plummeted to the ground, sparking briefly before going dark. But the damage was done, they were no longer safe. "We need to leave. Now," Alexander urged, already gathering their belongings. As they prepared to flee once more, Emily caught sight of Liam watching silently, his young face pale with fear. Kneeling beside him, she cupped his cheeks in her hands. "Listen to me, sweetheart. No matter what happens, remember how much I love you. You're stronger than anyone realizes, okay? Stronger than they'll ever be." Tears welled in his eyes, but he nodded bravely. "I love you too, Mom." With that, they slipped into the cover of darkness, leaving behind the sanctuary that had briefly sheltered them. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the daunting challenge of staying one step ahead of those who sought to claim Liam's extraordinary gift. But amidst the chaos, one truth remained unwavering. Emily and Alexander would stop at nothing to protect their son, even if it meant confronting their own demons along the way. The road ahead promised trials unlike any they'd faced before. Yet, as they vanished into the shadows, united by purpose and fueled by love, they carried with them a flicker of hope, a belief that together they could overcome anything. For Liam, for family, and for the future they refused to surrender.